Kirkendall, yes, of course. At the end of Hillcrest near the Reservoir Park there. And yeah, there's a bunch of beautiful black walnuts in this area here. You can see big walnuts there. And well, there's the leaf, it's disarticulating there. But it is, again, a compound leaf, so a central stalk with multiple leaflets on it, and usually has 11 to 17 leaflets on it. Don't quote me on that. It might be 11, 13, 15, I'm not sure. But yeah, black walnut, one diagnostic feature is it almost always has the terminal leaflet. The terminal leaf. That's okay. The terminal leaflet is reduced or absent usually on black walnut, which is a bit of a key diagnostic figure, but character. But yeah, you know, black walnuts are pretty easy to tell. You'll see the big, you know, walnuts. You might even see at you know, other times of the year just the shells, the eaten shells. The squirrels have gone through them already. You'll see them on the ground. And it has a distinctive, deeply furrowed bark, and they can become quite large trees as well. Yeah, black walnut is a common forest species. It normally hangs out in floodplains, often with black maple. We saw that black maple there on George Street there. But that black maple is it doesn't mind wet feet. So it'll hang out in floodplain habitats. You'll even see it on the edges of, say, deeper swamps, silver maple swamps, and that kind of thing. But it doesn't want moisture like all year round. Usually those areas will dry down a bit in the summer. It doesn't mind its feet a bit more wet in the spring, say in a raised floodplain or something like that. So it's not really a swamp, say, species, but it likes moist woodlands, and it also you'll see it in old fields as well, in hedgerows as well, because it has the ability to actually move into those habitats with the help of you know, small mammals. Will move them into those habitats, bury the nuts, forget about them, and you'll often see small walnuts growing in old fields and hedgerows and in thicket habitats, or say early successional forests, as they're called. Say an early forest. You know, that was a meadow that turned into a thicket, that turned into an early successional forest, that eventually becomes a forest where you'll find species like sugar maple, red oak, white pine, these kinds of species. But yeah, there's not too many tree species that will actually grow in those meadow and thicket habitats, but black walnut is one of them, so it's a very valuable species, as opposed to this buckthorn, which is right here, and you know, should not be encouraged. Yeah. If you have this growing in your hedge or in your, you know, the marginal areas of your yard, please route it out. It's pretty easy to tell the species. It has kind of sub-opposite leaves. It has those leaf margins that kind of curl up towards the tip. Yeah, that's sub-opposite means they're almost opposite, but you see they're just kind of staggered a bit there. But you see them everywhere. It's just a small tree or a kind of a shrubby little thing, but they can get to be trees that are, you know, 10, 15 centimeters in diameter. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of buckthorn in here, and they produce berries which are that are spread around by birds. Our birds will eat them. Even our native birds have started to, you know, form a taste for buckthorn as well. You know, when they're looking for something to, you know, to eat in the winter, they'll even start to eat them as well. But anyway, yeah, I think so. But then we have so many non-native birds here that are used to eating buckthorn in their native habitats as well. So, you know, we have the house sparrows and the starlings here, and I've seen them both eating buckthorn berries and all that. So, anyway, black walnut's just a great. It's a great street tree, no matter what people say about the nuts denting their cars or hitting them. I mean, you know, this is childish stuff, you know, as far as them being, you know, a hazard tree. They're relatively pest-free. They're a strong tree. You know, they got strong wood. You know, they don't often, say, fall apart. They're, you know, fairly long-lived. they'll live a couple centuries, maybe 3 centuries, and you know, yeah, they should be protected, because I've seen some smaller walnuts, not as big as this, in the city, because they're not too common, but they are out there in the lower city here and there, and I've seen quite a few chopped down in recent years, and I'm not sure if they're done legally or whatever, but yeah, people that say don't want the leaf litter, they don't want the nuts and stuff. I mean, you know, for a tree that feeds so much wildlife, you know, again, you gotta put native trees back if we want to feed native insects, and again, that whole food chain all the way up with small mammals and larger mammals as well. So yeah, lots of insects feed on this plant, which brings in the birds to feed on those insects. So yeah, just one more note about, you know, all the loss of habitat here. You know, field botanists and forest researchers like myself, we really don't know what the forest looked like. So much has been lost. So many of those interactions have been lost. Yeah, I had a forest friend of mine. Oh, it's disturbing. This guy's home here, this squirrel. Yeah, Mary Gartshore, she's probably the best biologist in the country. She said to me once, these old trees will actually make their own mulch. So the bark comes off and it mulches the tree below it. Yeah. So it's kind of a really neat thing. Like, what did the forest look like back then when, you know, we didn't have all these invasive species, including, you know, most of the earthworms here that are not native species here as well, because that humus layer in the forest has changed so much because of these non-native earthworms that are throughout, you know, most of our forests. When you're in a forest that doesn't have those earthworms, it's springy. The ground is actually springy from that duff layer there. And so, again, wondering what these old forests look like, the size of the trees, and again, these large specimens that would make their own mulch. They were so old. It's kind of amazing, and so, I don't know, it's, again, you're always just kind of guessing, and you just, you know, you read old accounts, and then you also, you know, look for remnant little representative habitats of older growth forest habitats to kind of paint some sort of picture, but really I feel like I know very little, despite almost 30 years of studying forests and plants and all that. So much has been lost. It's tragic. It really is tragic. In addition to all that First Nations knowledge of how to live here as well, and their language, you know, there was a wealth of information in there, and most of it's gone. And it's, you know, some would say what we know, you know, as present-day citizens, what we know about how to live in this landscape is very little. Most people don't really know. The lights go out, we're in trouble. The power goes out, we're in big trouble. So anyway, that's about it. Yeah. Okay, so we're in Kirkendall still, right? Yeah. And we're on Amelia Street, and you know, we haven't featured any conifers yet, so we have, you know, many native conifers. Primarily our two main conifers are white pine and hemlock, but we have, you know, other species as well that grow around here, black spruce, white spruce, in swamp environments, and we have a smattering of red pine and, you know, the edges of the golden horseshoe here and there, but mostly what you see in our forests is white pine and hemlock. We also have our native red cedar as well. It's our native juniper. It's actually a juniper, so it grows in fields and sometimes in open woodlands as well. And of course we have white cedar as well, which grows in swamps. The tree of life, there it is right there. One of the 4 sacred herbs, and yeah, great for smudging in your house along with sweetgrass, tobacco, sage, and white cedar there. But we wanted to feature this hemlock here. It's very unusual to see hemlock in the city. So this is Tsuga canadensis. That's Tsuga with a Tsuga. The T is silent. So it has really kind of small needles, kind of two ranked on either side of the stem. And hemlocks are amazing species. This is not the hemlock of, Socrates. That's another species that's in the genus Cicuta, which also grows around here. It's a perennial herb that grows in swamps. There's a couple hemlocks. They're just little herbs. So yeah, it's the kind of thing if you munched on a bit of the leaf, or definitely if you munched on the root, I think you'd die within 15 minutes. So the hemlock, the tree though, is not poisonous and is a wonderful native tree. And I think this is one of the trees, in addition to white cedar, that saves, say, Jacques Cartier and his crew from scurvy. I think you can get, the vitamin C from hemlock as well. And it grows all over, say, eastern Canada. And it is a very long-lived forest species. Hemlock, I say, is the most patient tree in the forest, and there are records in eastern North America of hemlocks that are 700-800 years old, that are growing in deep, shaded canyons. And say if you go to, Spencer Gorge there, you'll see hemlocks all throughout that area because it is the most shade-tolerant tree in our forests. So you got to picture that canyon there that's not getting much sun, and the arc of the sun going across. It might be 4 hours in some areas there in the summer. So you'll see many hemlocks growing there, and some of them might be quite old, even though despite being only a couple inches across, because there are again records of hemlocks that are just a couple inches across and being 200 years old. I've cored trees that are just, say, 15 centimeters across and got 75 rings. So, it's unclear whether this tree was planted or is a remnant of the forests that were along the escarpment through here, but definitely through the lower city of Hamilton, especially these are all north-facing slopes. So you got to think north and east-facing slopes are the cool slopes. South and west-facing slopes are the hot slopes. So south and west-facing slopes, you'll see hickories, oaks, white pine, even species like ironwood. They're really quite tough in really dry conditions. But on these north and east-facing slopes, you will see shade-tolerant sugar maples, even, say, basswood, but definitely the most shade-tolerant tree in the forest, which is hemlock. The only thing that grows under hemlock is hemlock, pretty much, So just amazing, amazing trees, and they should be planted. They have soft needles, so no problems with, say, bumping into them, getting kind of not like say an Austrian pine, which you'll see often around apartment complexes and townhouse complexes. Austrian pines with very long pointed needles. White pine has very soft needles, but hemlock as well has soft needles, and so it's great for a shady, difficult corner in your yard. And say only after, this is decades old, this tree at least. I mean, yeah. You plant one now and you're middle-aged, you probably won't live to see it get. It might get this big when you're, approaching a century old, 50 years later or something like that. But just great little trees. You can actually see the little tiny cones up there. They have small cones that are only about 2-3 centimeters long, and they feed all kinds of small mammals. And again, if you have it can tolerate really shade the sun. So, but if you have difficult shady conditions and you want a conifer for it, then plant a hemlock. Or even if you have, say, sunny conditions and want to pick a conifer, then pick one of our native conifers. Pick a white pine, pick hemlock, or pick our native red cedar as well, our native juniper, Juniperus virginiana. They call it red cedar, but it's actually a juniper. Or, of course, white cedar is a great tree to plant as well for hedging. Plant one of those. And avoid planting these Norway maples, which are, again, everywhere. See, See how many seedlings they spit out everywhere? There's Norway maples hiding in hedges, hiding in your gardens, everywhere, because they spit out so many. They're such a reliable seed producer that they just seem to go everywhere. In addition to these hibiscus, these Rosa Sharons, as most people know, any gardener knows, these Rosa Sharons they just go everywhere. Plant a native conifer: white pine, hemlock, red cedar, white cedar.